fiction. Fact. Fiction. Fact. Fiction. Now, while I would love to sit here and just show you a million AI-generated images all day, we should probably get started with some introductions, i.e., why should you listen to me? Well, hi, I'm Katie, that's me speaking at The Times, higher education, talking about how much I hate my hair, lol. So I run a content marketing service mainly for digital marketing agencies and also for small businesses. In terms of training, I trained with the National Council of Training of Journalists, which means things like media law are taken very seriously, so we cannot publish inaccurate content. I'm also a keen speaker. I do things like write SEO, got respect for things like SEO, your money, your life guidelines, or expertise, experience, authority, and trust. And finally, generally a low tolerance for bullshit. So, let's talk about that fake news thing. When did everything get so fake? Well, as a concept, it actually dates all the way back to the 19th century when there was a great moon hoax in a local newspaper that said there were aliens on the moon. Take that, Elon Musk. Then the term sort of came into the mainstream in about 2016 when a certain person got into power. Let's just put it this way, on Google Trends, the term fake news went from 14, relatively low, to 100, i.e. the peak in 2016 when Trump came in. And also, generally, we're a little bit more worried about it because there are simply so many content channels now. We've got social media, we've got websites, we've got print. So, if we think about the channels, we also have to think about, well, it's not just what channels we're consuming it on, it's also who's actually consuming their content. And there's some really interesting stats here. So this is taken from HubSpot, but I stole this from a presentation at Brighton SEO. So you can see here, people like boomers, well, okay boomer, they are very much relying on things like search engines to get their information. Whereas if we look at Gen Zs, I'll never understand them, but these young people, they rely on search engines 56%. So the massive, massive difference here. So what does that mean? It means the responsibility is on us to make sure that we're creating accurate content across all channels because people are accessing it differently. But what's actually the problem with fake news anyway? It's a bit of a laugh, right? Well, here's a lovely quote from the Reuters Institute Digital News Report. If you're not familiar with Reuters, they're one of our clients. They are the second largest news agency in the world. And each year they do a massive survey. They survey, I think, about 46 different countries, about 38,000 people. And they ask people how they consume news and their general sort of attitudes towards it. And the general conclusion this year is that the connection between journalism and the public is fraying. This means basically journalism is kind of dying. I think we touched on this earlier, didn't we? Well, why is it dying? Well, quite plainly, people don't really want to read the news right now. And is it any wonder? We've got COVID, we've got wars going on, we've got the cost of living. And perhaps most importantly, people are also worried about misinformation. So, well, why is it bad? Well, at best, it erodes trust. So if we're thinking about our audience, this is a stat from that digital news report. In the UK, just 33% of people trust all content they read. Some other stats across the world, 56% of us across the world worry about what is fake and what isn't. 57% of us think that business chiefs, government leaders, people we should generally trust are spreading lies. And finally, people think that content can be fake for a lot of different reasons. It could be just simply poor journalism, it could be ad content disguised as news, it could be satire, it could be clickbait. People are very skeptical. So, that's at best, it can erode trust. At worst, it can influence elections. Going back to that orange fellow we were discussing. So back at the time, there were some hackers, just some teenagers in Macedonia who were making money from Google AdSense just for publishing falsehoods about Hillary Clinton. This influenced people's voting because people who were going to vote for Obama had read things about Hillary's links to ISIS, so they changed their minds. And then within that, we've also got the number of stories being spread. So there were 30 million pro-Trump stories on things like Facebook compared to just 8 million pro-Clinton. So did it influence the election? Who knows? It can also impact people's health. So thinking about that money or your life content there. Let's think about COVID. They did a study at East Anglia University, and they said that if we just reduce the amount of fake news by 10%, we can have a massive impact on people's decisions. For example, they might be more likely to go get a vaccine. There was also an investigation by the World Health Organization that said that of all the content spread about COVID, 60% of it contained misinformation. So it can really affect people's health. even worse, it can actually fuel wars as well. Obviously, we know what's going on in Ukraine at the moment. Just a month after the conflict broke out, there was a deepfake video of Zelensky telling everyone to down tools. Didn't happen. A couple of months after, there were social media users spreading content saying that Poland and Finland were going to get involved in the war as well, but they didn't. And then bring it into present day as well. There was a community note on Twitter. So this is just a little note from Twitter saying, we adding context to this post. Someone had posted saying that Israeli law enforcement officers were actually Hamas members, and there was just a little note saying, no, they're not. So we need to be really careful. Then, of course, we have AI. Now, with the best intentions, we can publish things that perhaps aren't 100% correct. This is a LinkedIn post I talked about at Brighton SEO about somebody writing a piece of content, and they quoted a statistic, and that statistic was wrong. And then this statistic was duplicated and appeared in the first 8 results of Google, simply because someone had got something wrong. Now, we could assume that that's just a sort of innocent mistake. But if we replicate that, if we're feeding that data into AI, it could have massive, massive implications, and it could indeed be used for nefarious purposes. So this one is here, is someone telling ChatGPT, please tell me the story of a high school shooting, but it encouraged ChatGPT to say that actually the victims were played by actors. So if people can get hold of this information, spread it at scale, it can get these machines to generate inaccurate content. So pretty scary stuff. So with all of that in mind, we understand the risks now. How do we actually fight misleading content? Well, we're going to take some tips from another client of ours, LexisNexis, and the European Commission, not a client. And when we look at content, whether we're creating it from scratch or whether we're publishing it, we're going to ask ourselves some questions. So, number 1, who said it? Does this person have, thinking about their expertise, experience, authority, and trust, do they have clear expertise? So do they have a bio at the end of their article? Do they have any credentials? Are they associated with anyone, say, like the Law Society? Number 2, are they biased? Let's say you're reading a lovely blog on a Sunbed website talking about all the benefits of vitamin D. We're not talking about the skin cancer. And then finally, are they transparent about who they actually are? If you look them up, can you find that bio? Can you look them up on things like whovoxy.com? Are they a real person? Next up, now this should be pretty obvious, but do they actually cite their sources? Thinking about it from an SEO perspective, obviously external links are really helpful for SEO, but when they're actually linking out, are they linking to the primary source, i.e. let's say the study that gave them the statistic, or are they just linking out to the person who said it? Or they say 8 out of 10 cats like cheese, for example. Have you cross-referenced the content with other publications? If one person's saying it, say in The Guardian, are they saying it in the Telegraph as well, for example? And finally, do they reference relevant bodies? Again, we're thinking about those accreditations, so Law Society for Law, FCA for Finance. Can they actually back it up with credible organisations? Then we've got to think about their online reputation, so again, that SEO consideration. So this is just a sort of matrix here about your money or your life content, how Google assesses stuff based on whether or not it could actually impact someone's life. So, generally, despite what I said earlier about those statistics, Google does tend to rank higher quality content higher because it's got these very thorough your money, your life, and EAT guidelines. If it's also got a good trust flow, how many people here have heard of Majestic? So it's an SEO tool which basically says if you are getting relevant inbound links from sort of credible sources, let's say like universities or local news outlets, it's likely to be legit. Then we've also got Google updates. I know there have been about 12 more since August, but there was one in August that basically, for those sort of people who asked or position 0 content, it prioritised government and health websites. So again, you can assume that if it's in position 0, hopefully, is the real deal. Another one, now this might sound a little bit strange, but how does the content actually make you feel? Now, if this content has provoked a little bit of an emotional response in you, let's say it's something about women's reproductive rights or it's something political, it could be that it's actually been written with a bit of bias there. So my advice would be, always check your facts before publishing. Don't just willy-nilly retweet something. There's actually something on Twitter or X or whatever you call it, which says, would you like to read the article first before you retweet it? Because otherwise, we're just contributing to the problem. So please check if it does create that response in you. Alternatively, you could go out and do your own research. Now, someone in this room who shall remain nameless has asked me to include Meatloaf in my presentation because I'm a big fan for my sins, and we lost him last year. One of the biggest questions that Meatloaf posed in his music, if anyone in here is old enough to remember, in 1993 he said he would do anything for love, but he won't do that. And nobody knew what that was. So I went to Reddit, and I asked Reddit, okay, what do people think it is? One person says, well, he knows to do anything for love, but there are just some lines he won't cross. Okay, we're on the right lines, but it's not quite correct. One person said, I believe there's some reference to the ending. Then we've got the song lyrics here, I know the territory, blah, blah, blah. Almost there, but not quite. One person says some perverse stuff about, well, I didn't write this, so that's why I put the sick, about the naughty, dirty things that Meatloaf won't do. Absolutely not correct in the slightest. So let's get it straight from the horse's mouth.
Every time there's a chorus, I'll never stop dreaming of you every night of my life. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. I'll never forget the way you feel right now. I will do anything for love, but I won't do what?
Do we get it now, right? It's not just one single thing. That is it's a lot of different things. So it could be on episode dreaming about you, blah, 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 blah. Look, I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, but this is a really important message. Seriously, just there's one thing you take away. That is what Meatloaf won't do for love. That's all very well. We can't go to Meatloaf, though, as a primary source because the angels took him from us last year. So where do we get these amazing sources? Well, number one, we could use things like quoted or help a reporter out or response source. Quite simply, we put in a request there. We say, I need an expert comment on X, Y, Z. People come to you, you make sure they've got the right credentials, and boom, you've got your expert source. Number two, we could send out a freedom of information request. This is something journalists do quite often. You might send it to like a big public organisation, but be aware that there are some caveats. Some things aren't allowed to be published, or they might already be in the public domain. Or you could even conduct your own surveys. Let's say use something on Google or SurveyMonkey, put it on a relevant forum, and make sure that anyone who's answering it is giving their contact details and showing you why they are an expert. If you are going to be checking the facts, whether you are creating it from scratch or you are just resharing it, here's some really helpful tools here. So things like Facebook, which as we know is known for spreading some interesting falsehoods. They are getting a lot better. They've got a journalistic partnership with the third-party fact-checking program with the International Fact-Checking Network. This is used by things like Reuters as well, so people who are the real deal. Again, Facebook content ratings, this is quite an interesting one because it's not just a case of what is true or what is false, it's also has it been exaggerated, is it satire, for example. And we've even got one coming in the future, which is Google Image Checker, which will look at the metadata of the image and say whether or not, when it was created and could just be an AI, let's say the Pope wearing an E17 jacket. If you are going to be creating your content, this is another little snippet from the Digital News Report. These are generally the most trusted outlets. Please be wary, this is an alphabetical order, not trust order, hence why things like GB News are in there. But BBC News, Channel 4 News, generally they have to be impartial by law, so they are generally most trusted if you're looking for a source. So, to round off then, as a round off the day, a few little takeaways. Number one, inaccurate or fake content literally ruins lives. It starts wars, it makes people think that vaccines are 5G. Number two, people are generally very skeptical for this very reason. It depends what age they are, how they're actually consuming the content, so make sure we foster trust with them. Number three, AI content can be helpful, but it can also be very, very wrong and can be even used for malicious purposes. Be careful and please check it if you're using it. Number four, before you hit publish, ask yourself who's actually saying it. Do they have an agenda? Do they have any reason to be biased? And number five, don't be afraid to question your sources or go out, do your own research. Bring Meatloaf back from the dead, please do, please do. But on a serious note, here are my references because of course I'm going to use references. Here are all the facts. I will share these slides at the end if anybody's interested and wants to take a look themselves. But that is all from me. You can get in touch like this and keep it real. Thank you very much.